What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is Figure It Out. I'm joined today with Johannes Erpelainen. I've still tripped all over that as the third chance I had. But you're a professor of, is it international relations or international studies, international something or other? What is it again?
My title is Professor of Energy Resources and Environment, but I am in a school of advanced international studies.
And usually in these figure it out episodes, it's a dream job, which obviously it is to be a professor at a prestigious university. And we talk about how can you get to where you are with no friends, no family, and no cash. And I think that there isn't much question of the way to do that, which is you'd have to work your ass off and get a scholarship if you don't have the cash. And so that's why I keep that as kind of moot. Would you say that that's accurate in how things are these days? If you want to become a prof, then you pretty much have to get a scholarship or already have the background to get the cash?
Absolutely. And in fact, if you want to do a PhD, even if you can afford it, you would never want to go to a program where you need to pay for it yourself, because that program would be so bad that you would not have any chance at all of getting a good faculty job.
Okay, well there you go. That's really interesting to know how it is. So I've got some specific questions that I've let you know what my inspirations are for them, but I'm not going to put all the pieces together for you in the audience. So you're going to have to just figure it out. So the first statement I have here is about how David Mamet, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's the playwright and screenwriter of Glengarry Glen Ross. So that's one that lots of people know. But he said it was in his master class. He mentioned that people are individually stupid, but collectively we're a genius. And he was making that remark in terms of in the theater, where if you're explaining what's going on, if you're telling the audience what they already know, they're not going to forgive you for that, and collectively they'll figure out whatever it is. So it's kind of like a Reddit sort of thing, I suppose. But you study and are an expert and a professor at a prestigious university in the School of International Affairs, and specifically on environment, is what you were just saying, or can you dig into that a little bit more?
That's correct. So I study energy and environmental policy, climate change, renewable energy, power sector, topics like that.
Okay, so there's a lot of power dynamics and commerce and things like that are involved in those subjects, and so I think that you would have to have well, I had this question for another interview, but I think this is one that works for you as well, which is when people imagine. People being pedantic, or when people think of academics in general, like without getting into any politics or whatever, if I think of some thinkers that, they comment on international relations and different ideas, I can think of like Jordan Peterson. And he's one where you have to be careful about even mentioning his name, especially as a man. And a lot of that has to do with how he's associated with Nazism. But one of the things that I think the reason I bring him up is because he has an ability that I think in entertainment, in film and whatnot, it's commonly represented, which is that having the ability to dress down somebody's ideas, basically just slice up their argument like a sushi chef, and just like the person's just crumbling in their position over that. So, as far as becoming a professor at a prestigious university, do all of your peers have to have that ability, at least in their specialization, or is that just like not even something that's involved in that professional life?
In general, the answer is yes. So as academics, we spend a lot of time talking about ideas, challenging ideas, coming up with new ones, criticizing other people's ideas. So generally that is true. There are some fields that are very technical, where if you are, for example, really good at mathematics and statistics, you don't need to have that ability beyond your very technical niche.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense, and I'm sensitive to it because I studied engineering, and I don't think I'm pretty sure everyone at any college would be aware of how quick engineers are to dismiss the value of any sort of like a soft sciences, social sciences, anything like that. I think it's pretty common, and I think that arrogance comes from the knowledge that it doesn't matter what you feel about the laws of physics. You have to obey these rules, or else the bridge will fall down. And if you notice, all of us engineers, we go through this particular set of courses, and the bridges don't fall down. So there's a certain like that empiric verification, I think, is something that comes from that. But the reason I bring it up is because recently you have so much distrust for science, and particularly medicine, that I think the missing link from people who they either didn't have a decent college education or they didn't attend college at all is they don't realize that every freshman is trying to disprove everything they possibly can. Okay, like, or at least there's a big group of them where they want to doubt, like cast everything into doubt. So can you comment on that environment, and whether I'm off base?
You're correct. So if you think of science, it's a method and it's a process of learning new things. Science is never complete. We are always questioning things, we are challenging, we are trying to overturn the conventional wisdom. But to do that, you do need some specialized training and experience and expertise. So I think it's always good to question things, to challenge things, to kind of debate things instead of taking them for granted. But we should all remember that outside our own area of expertise, we don't necessarily have a lot to add to that discussion. So I would not go to somebody who does medicine and tell them that I disagree with them on whether this particular pill works or not, because I really have nothing to add to that topic.
That's beautiful. And so the reason why I was going down that, and I know I had previously said that I'm not going to show my cards, but here I am anyway. The reason I'm going down that direction is I'm just making sure, since you're specifically in energy and environment and those related things, it's just how well versed you need to be. Like I'm now in contact with an Oxford professor of English, but he's from New Jersey. And so like just like that, right? Like right there, that's like it says so much, right? Like so like does that still mean he has to have like an encyclopedic knowledge of the competing spellings of the word Wednesday? Or does that just means that he has to have more exposure to American literature and culture, or what exactly is it? So my question to you, to frame what I end up asking you, is like how well versed in international affairs do you have to be in order to be a professor with your specialization?
So I think that the right way to think about this question is that you do need to obviously have fairly good knowledge of what's happening out there. You need to know history, you need to know about how international organizations work, you need to know how countries do diplomacy, you need to know all that. But the thing that makes academia challenging is that you need to also have specialized research skills. And that's often the more challenging part, is that it's not enough to just know what's out there and what's happening. You need to also be able to generate original new research. And that is a really difficult thing to do. That's, I think, where most people who try have the difficulty.
That's really interesting. All right, so I'll tie that in here. So, if we're talking about international affairs, the systems in place today are more sophisticated than any time in history. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I figured it was kind of a slam dunk because each country does have to interact with all of the other countries, as opposed to just their immediate neighbors. So that has to be a bigger level of complexity. So also, arguably, international affairs are the product of commerce and the ability to tax, as far as I can see. Am I missing a lot?
No, I think you're right. So if you think of, again, the international system,
Mhm.
it's the primary units today are still states. These are sovereign kind of governments that have a monopoly of violence on their territory and that have the ability to tax their subjects. There are also other players, multinational companies, NGOs, all that, but the states are the primary players to this date.
Okay, and so these are the most powerful nations and corporations. That's those are the players on your playing field that you guys have to study, right? And so since like these are the guys who and like the way that I'm framing it isn't landing quite the way that I hoped it would, but what these corporations and governments control, it's only the things that can be bought, sold, or stolen, especially if it's expensive. Is that fair to say? Like I know that they make attempts for like making us believe certain ideas and things like that, but the thing is that that's not really reliable as far as a function of what the most powerful nations are doing. But I'm saying like they're preoccupied with the things that can be bought, sold, or stolen, especially if it's
Absolutely. So
yeah.
if you think of the where does national power come from, in the
Mm-hmm.
end, it is your economic capacity is really the kind of fundamental driver.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because really what it indicates is how much you can motivate your populace, right?
Right.
It's like how much output can you have as a result of directing your populace to, hey, we need to do this right now. That's what would be the balance then. Okay, so the reason why I'm going in there is that because there's so much money involved, and like the power, like power for power's sake. Me, I think I'm still a little bit of an optimist about that, which is where I don't think it's as in demand as you might be led to think, and I'm not sure if we could really say much about that. But just because there's so much money involved, at least that really means that the world's best and brightest, or at least the wealthiest and most powerful, have designed this international system that you study in international relations, right?
Well, to some extent, yes. Obviously, it's heavily influenced by people who have the economic resources and who have the kind of capacity to generate wealth. But I wouldn't say that it's really a very well designed system, right? It's really
Mm-hmm.
a kind of a historical accident, and a lot of it is just out of freak chance, right? Whatever happened to happen in this war and that war, when did people find this and that continent and all that? So there's also that side.
Okay, that's awesome. So maybe you caught where I was going, because the direction I was going is that, like, if you know any physicians well, you'll notice that they marvel at the genius that is the human body system. Like when they actually know how a body works, and they say it's I can't believe it was designed this well. And to remind what I started framing this conversation with, I said that Mamet says that people are stupid individually, but collectively we're a genius. And overall, I understand that this is a straight opinion, but how accurate is that saying? I mean, like, specifically, if we look at international affairs, personally, I don't see genius. And I'm curious, is that because I don't know enough? But you're just saying that basically, like, a lot of it was based on chance and outcomes of wars and things like that. So like it like I guess I'm trying to say, is there method to the madness? These different international things, because it seems really like patchwork arrangements and all that. Is that fair to say that that's where?
I think it is fair to say. So the big problem with international relations is that we cannot really have reliable binding contracts
Right.
between countries, right? Everything has to be enforced yourself and in the end with force, right? That is very different. I can write a contract with anybody here in the United States, and if it gets really bad, I can go to the court and ask them to take care of it. I cannot do that in international relations. It's every country for themselves if things get really bad.
And when they make the treaties, from what I understand, they basically carve out things where it's like, if you don't do what we say, then we're going to foreclose on some property. Like, for example, like let's say the Suez Canal, which I understand it's controlled by the Chinese now. Like that would be an example of, like, well, if people don't pay up, then we just completely take all ownership of it, and then you're not welcome in. And that way it has sort of like a self-enforcement without actual military intervention. So that's accurate?
Yeah, you always try to build in an agreement some kind of enforcement mechanism. So, for example, we could have a trade agreement between the United States and China. And if one of them stops honoring their commitments, then the other side responds or retaliates by putting tariffs on their products. So,
Mhm.
yes, you always try to build some way to enforce the contract.
Okay. I just realized I'm going to get myself in a pickle in my last question, but we can still go ahead and do this. So I want to talk about the American Revolution, and this is rapid fire. This is the lightning question round, the lightning round. Okay. So the first question I have is that before the American Revolution, did the colonies pay taxes to England slash the UK?
Yes, they did.
Oh, they did. Okay. And could England slash the UK create laws that were enforced in the colonies?
I think they could.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they could. All right. So we've got those two covered. If a resident of the 13 colonies wanted to travel to, say, France, what was the passport situation like?
I can't quite figure, I can't quite remember exactly how it worked, but I would imagine that it's part of the colonial system governed from the
Okay,
United
so they'd have passports. So like if they were from Georgia, they'd have a Georgia passport. Well, like I'm talking before the American Revolution.
States. No, I would imagine it would be part of the British Empire.
Okay, so it would be the same as, like, I'm Canadian, so on mine it actually has a little note that's supposed to be from the Queen, saying
Exactly.
that yeah, the Queen says you have to let this person, like, walk around, and with all the protections you'd extend your own citizenship and all that sort of thing. So if you were in the 13 colonies before the American Revolution and you got a passport, and I understand that that's, like, I imagine, like, passports were more common in Europe, like for international travel, right? Like, because
Right,
I can't imagine too many people. Because I know that the trip from Africa to the U.S. that took about 3 months.
right, right.
So it's like people aren't just hopping on there all willy nilly, and
Correct.
and they're not doing these passport updates like we are or anything like that. So it seems that if you were in the colonies, you get a British passport to
Correct.
travel internationally. Okay, all right, and then the money that was issued that the colonies were using, they'd use coins, and sometimes oh no, what would they use back then before
My
the American?
understanding is that, of course, they would to some extent use the British currency,
Yeah,
but I think they also had a lot of like local currencies, and I think there were hundreds of them
right.
that were used for like very specific local exchange and all that.
Okay. Okay. So I think that covers that part. So let's talk about after the American Revolution. So after the American Revolution, did America continue to pay tax to the UK or England?
Nope.
No, they didn't. Okay. And did they continue to obey laws that were created in the UK in America? Did they continue to?
No, they may have kind of grandfathered in some of the old laws, but it was their decision at that
Right.
point if they want to continue following them or not.
But it was enforced by themselves and not from the
Exactly.
UK. So they had
Exactly.
their own independent government of the UK. Okay, right. So, and then there was a treaty that ended the American Revolution, right?
Yep.
Okay, so all right. So we got that. So we got the passports, we got the money, we got the laws. Right. There's one other question that I have, which is that this is something I heard out in Taiwan. I'm just curious if there's any validity of this. I'm only interested in facts, which is, I was told that at the end of World War II, that Japan ended up losing control of Taiwan. And one problem is that the Japanese neglected to mention to whom Taiwan was relinquished to. Are you aware of anything like that?
I wasn't actually aware of that. That's
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So I was told that the Japanese in 1945, when they lost control, because they did have control of Japan, and as a matter of fact, the seniors in Taiwan right now. It's fairly common for them to be able to speak Japanese and possibly some Taiwanese, but they wouldn't be able to speak Mandarin. However, the ones who came over with Chiang Kai-shek, they forced them to teach in Mandarin the same way that they do in China. So in China, it doesn't matter if you're in Hong Kong or whatever. You like any area of China, you're being educated in Mandarin. So that's what I was told. I was told that Japan did not mention to whom they relinquished control of Taiwan to, and that was a very interesting point, I thought. So
Absolutely.
so there you go. So I don't, I know that I ask some really weird questions sometimes, and they're so unrelated, and it's so But anyway, those are most of the things I wanted to mention, and I really appreciate you spending the time because we also did the chance encounter and the who are you helping interview. So this has been really really interesting, and I think we did a pretty good. Well, I did a pretty good job of stepping around this because you have no part in what I'm up to.
That is very true. So it's all on you. Yeah.
Oh yes, it is 100% on me. And if you look me up, then you can just say it's like no, that this is exactly the kind of thing that he'd do, and just kind of like rope somebody else into it. Anyway, make sure you subscribe so that I can do more interviews like this and talk about things that stuff that pops into my head. All right, awesome. Thanks.